Good evening everyone. My name is Liz Shanahan and we are here tonight in session 1 of a 2-part learning program on provide care for babies and toddlers. This training session is on gather information to assist in the transition of a baby or toddler into your education and care service. By the end of the training, you will have the knowledge and tools to gather information from families to assist in the transition of a baby or toddler into your education and care service. In session 2, we will learn how to use the gathered information to assist the children in care. There is no assessment on this learning program. Welcome and thank you for coming and participating tonight. We have a couple of housekeeping rules. Please ensure that you fill out the attendance sheet and give it to me before you leave. The session will go for approximately 40 minutes. The evacuation procedure is through the door, turn to your right and out the back door to evacuation point A at the back of the house. Toilet and hand washing facilities are down the hallway to the door marked toilet. Please turn off your mobile phones or put them on silent or vibrate for the entire session. At the end of this session, please fill out the feedback form and ensure that you give it to me before you leave. So let's get started. Can everyone see the presentation screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, our agenda tonight. We're going to discuss where to acquire the information needed and the tools to use, issues that may arise while you're collecting the information, consequences of not having information, benefits of having the information. We will then summarise, we will have feedback, and then we will finish with a thank you. So we're going to start off tonight watching this short video. And while you watch it, please think about, have you experienced this in your service? And how did it make you feel? So Dad has left the room and the little one is starting to get quite upset. Not wishing to have any association with the caregiver in the room at this time and becoming quite distressed. Dad has now re-entered the room and picks the child up, and the child is comforted and stops. So how did it make you feel? Well, first of all, have you experienced this in your education and care service?
Yes. Yes.
And how did it make you feel?
Bad for the child, like
Upset.
yeah.
Bad for the child? Upset?
Sad.
Sad? Sad for you or sad for the child?
The child. The child.
Upset for the child?
Yeah. And then for me, emotionally, it made me feel stressed.
Right. Did it have any other effect on you, Beck?
I just maybe want to know more information. Maybe want to learn how to soothe the child.
Right. So we're next going to talk about how and where to acquire this information.
is it up the top? Yeah, now click.
So we're going to talk about, first talk to the parents. They know the child really, really well, and they're the first port of call. You can get information from enrolment forms, which could give you information about other siblings in the family, cultural heritage, medical conditions, or any other members that live at home. If your scheme has a child information sheet, you will be able to access that and gather more information about the child and the family. If you have an interview guide, it could tell you about previous care experiences, behaviour of the child, personality of the child, the child's interests, strengths. Maybe they have a special toy or comforter or a blanket that they take with them when they go out, or even a dummy. Yes, Kath?
I've got an interview list of questions that I like to ask the parents when they come in, and one of the ones that I always like to ask is what might make a child afraid, because I had a son that was really afraid of ants, and teachers never understood why he would get so emotional about it, and some kids can get really upset over something that doesn't occur to us, like a lawnmower blowing, or
Vacuum cleaner.
vacuum cleaner, or storms. So if you have that information, it makes you a bit more prepared for addressing their day.
And
I
that's a
remember
really,
when someone wouldn't go to the toilet in my toilet because it had blue water in it.
right. Well, that's a really good point to bring up, Kath, that on your interview guide, you could have a series of questions about fears. Is there anything they're fearful of? Or anything that might upset them through the day, or when they're left, anything like that. You could also observe the child at interview time. Does the child separate from the parent easily? Is the child independent? Does the child stick close to the family member that they've come with?
Also, if they have a particular interest, like if you notice that they've gone straight to the trains and they didn't leave them until they left, then you know what you need to have out for them to be more comfortable next
And that would
time.
cheer them up. If you had to distract them in some way, you could go to whatever their interests are.
Right. Yes, that's right. You also could talk to agencies and get reports on the child, especially if they're a special needs child. You will need to know a lot of information so that you can easily transition the child from their home setting into your education and care service as well. You also have to take into account your own scheme's policy and procedures. And as an example, I have one here, and it says, discuss the child's diet or nutritional policy, their rest time, behaviour management, special needs, family cultural practices, and preferred settling process for the child. All these things will help you be able to transition the child into your education and care service. So if you have all this information, it possibly might make it easier for you. There's no guarantees. You also have to comply with the national standards, Quality Standard 6.11. Parents are encouraged to share their understanding of the children's strengths, interests, abilities and needs. Settling in process should be tailored to the individual children and the family. 6.21 says, the expertise of the family is recognised and they share in the decision making about their child's learning and well-being. So by gathering all this information before the child comes into care, you actually address quality standard 6.11 and 6.21. With the Early Learning Years framework, it says educators recognise families are the children's first and most influential teachers. So therefore, talking to the parents first will give you a lot of information about the child, because they know their child the best. Children's families and early childhood educators all contribute to successful transitions between settings. So by gathering all this information from the parents, your information sheets, your interview guides, observing the child, agency reports, you'll have a better a more successful transition from their home environment to your care environment. So now we're on to talking about some issues when collecting information. The information that you gather from the families, you must do it in a very sensitive way. You can only collect information that pertains to the children. You cannot ask inappropriate questions, like as an example, how much money do you earn? That has no relevant status with settling the child into care. So you must keep your questions that pertain to the children. You have to consider cultural differences. So what are some of the cultural differences that you have experienced in your education and care services?
I've had a few with dietary situations
Environments, yeah.
where either they weren't able to celebrate things and have particular items of food, or they've had like a lot of, like in some cultures, they like to give the kids a lot of like cow's milk, and you have to try and transition them into solids and explain to the parents how that works as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a child that wasn't allowed pork, and his mum had told me that. But at first she was doing the cooking for the meals, because he was a late night child.
Right.
And then she had asked me to take on the meals, and I did have it in my head about the pork, but I didn't click that he couldn't have ham. And one day I'd given him ham, and she said, oh no, he's not allowed to have. I didn't quite click, even though she told me pork.
All right.
But yeah, he wasn't allowed to have pork.
Right, so you have to take all those cultural differences into account. In some instances, you could do some research before the families come into care, so that you know what appropriate questions to ask, you know who to ask, because in some cultures you can't speak to the woman, you have to speak to the male. Families may be fearful of what you're going to do with the information that you collect. So at your interview time, state why you need this information and what you're going to do with it. So that you need the information to get a bigger picture of the child that's coming into care. You're going to use that information to transition the child into your education and care service from the home setting, to make it easier for the child. So now we're going to talk about consequences. So as we saw before on our video of the little boy crying and being very upset when Dad left, that was an example of separation anxiety. If you didn't have any of the information that we've just talked about, you could possibly end up with a child who has separation anxiety. Separation anxiety refers to the developmental stage in which a child experiences anxiety due to separation from the primary caregiver, usually the mother, but not always. It can be a guardian, it can also be another family member. this phase is standard around 8 months of age and can last until the child is 14 months old. And they're just approximate ages, because I've had children in care that it's started at 6 months and it's lasted to about 12 months of age. Then I've had children that it hasn't started until 12 months of age and it lasts to their 2 years.
Or
So-
older. I've had
or
a child
older, right.
Or I've had the opposite, where you've had a child that was a baby come in till they're 8 months old, and then all of a sudden they develop it, and then it passes again. It's like a section of time where they've just realised that the parents have gone.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that is just a guide, a developmental guide. They could start earlier, they could start later. It could end very quickly, or it could last for a very long time. So separation anxiety, there could be crying, and crying can be just a little bit of whimpering and that, or it could be, as we saw in the video, the child was becoming quite distressed. It can lead to tantrums, so therefore screaming and kicking and hitting and headbutting the floor. So in that case, you would need to supervise the child very closely if that's how they were dealing with the separation. It could lead to an injury, like the child hitting the head on the floor or things like that. Or it could lead to an injury to yourself. If the child kicks you or thrashes around, you could be head-butted, or you could be kicked or punched. So we're trying to get to the stage where we don't have that scenario, but just be aware that with separation anxiety, you possibly could get to that stage.
I've had a child in care where you've done everything to try and soothe them, and nothing works. If I leave them alone, it's over so much quicker. That was one of the things I worked out, that I could be there all day offering them stuff and they'd be screaming and kicking their legs, but the sooner I left them alone for some own space for a few minutes, they'd calm down and come and join in.
So you got to that stage through observing the child and having the child in care, and then organising your routine by not interacting as much and taking a step back and letting the child calm down and focus and move away from you.
Yeah.
So, and every child will be different. Every child that comes in that has separation anxiety will be different. What works for one child might not work for the next child that comes in. So again,
And the level of anxiety may be different. Like one will just might be crying for a few minutes and get a little emotional, but as soon as one's left the building, they've moved on. And then some kids will remember the whole day that they're upset.
So from all the information that you've gathered before the child has actually started will help you to make your decision, Patsy, whether you interact with the child fully, or whether you take that step back and let the child disengage from you on their own, and then they'll calm down and they will join into the routine or experiences that are being offered. But if you didn't have that information, well then that mightn't be as achieved as quickly as what you have done. Now, distress to the child. This can lead to, as we just talked about, distress to the child crying and get very upset, hot and sweaty, and could possibly even make themselves sick. But it also leads to distress to the parent as well, because if the parent sees this child showing this separation anxiety before they leave, they will leave feeling very guilty, in my experience, very emotionally distraught.
I always send texts during the day if there's a parent like that. So they leave when the child's crying. As soon as they leave, and then once things have settled down, I might send a photo through of them happily playing or something to put the parents' mind at ease. And I'll do that to parents. I may have had a child in care for 3 years, but if that child's having a bad morning and mum looks worried, I'll always send it through.
But and that's really, really great, and that's, we'll get on to more on that into session 2 tonight. The separation anxiety can also lead to distress for the other children that are in care. If you have a child that's very distressed, even to the point of maybe having the tantrum, the other children can become fearful and be distressed, and then they might start crying, and then you'll have more than one child with separation anxiety, and then that puts more stress on you, and emotional stress as well.
Because you're the one that has to do something about it.
You're the one who has to do something about it. That's right, Kath. Exactly. Okay. So by having all the information that we've and exploring all the avenues that we've just talked about to gather the information, hopefully we will not have many of these issues. We mightn't have the child screaming to the extreme. We might not have the child getting to the tantrum stage where they kick and scream and punch and hit their heads. Or the child does not become too distressed to the point that they're hot and sweaty and make themselves sick, or they won't have any injuries. There will be less distress for the actual child, there will be less distress for the other children in care, and there also will be less distress for you, and you will be much more calm and collected. So, our next discussion point are the benefits of collecting the information. One benefit is that you continue to do what is done at home in your service. And by doing so, what does it give the child?
Consistency.
Yeah, and what else? Comfort. Yes?
Familiarity.
Yes?
A smoother transition.
A smoother transition. It also gives the child security. So, and they quicker they become and feel secure in your education and care service, the quicker the separation anxiety will disappear. So that's a very big benefit for Right, information gathered supports continuity of care between home and the education service. So if you're doing the same thing at your education service as what mum and dad or grandma or the guardian or caregiver does at their place, that again will give the child security and hopefully make them feel more secure quicker, and then you would have less separation anxiety. The settling in process is tailored to meet the individual needs of the child and family. So from the information that you've gathered from all the sources we've talked about, you might have to change your routine for when the child comes into care. You might have to put the child to sleep straight away when they come into care, whereas you normally would keep everybody up until rest time later on in the day. But this child, because of the information that you've gathered, you might need to put the child to bed straight away. So you could have to change your daily routine. Produces the best outcome for the child and the educator. So by having all the information that we've collected over the interview and the interview guide and the observation and agencies and all that, it will provide the best outcome for the child. So the child feels secure, maybe not so much separation anxiety, not so much crying. It also gives you more comfort that you are doing what's best for the child, and the child will calm down and you will be able to continue your normal daily routine. understanding the way the child is responding or behaving in a certain way. By knowing all the information that we've collected, it gives you an understanding of why the child is behaving in that manner. And if you have a good understanding of why that's happening, you have a better method of helping the child to cope with coming into care. So if you know why the child is upset, it may be because they haven't had any care experiences before. It might be that grandma has always cared for the child, and now they've come into a new care service. It's strange, it's new, it could be noisy, it could be very bright. There could be lots of things that will upset the child. It allows for planning of experiences or set a routine or change a routine. By having all the information, you can set a new routine for the child, or you can change the routine that you have.
Yeah. I think sometimes too it's really good when families give you an outlined routine so that you know roughly at 10 o'clock that child needs a bottle, so you can address that need. That's what I found, especially with toddlers and little ones, because they can't verbalise, oh, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, so it's a lot easier to have that written
You
routine.
just learn the cues too, like
Yeah, because you can sort of pick it up.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
some
that's
people-
what that cue, like what they do when they're
Yeah,
tired or hungry.
that's a really good point to make, because that's another piece of information gathering. If you ask the family for the baby's routine, you can then work out that routine into your routine, so the transition into care is much easier because you can individualise a routine for that child.
Yeah.
I had a baby start 3 weeks ago. He's 8 months old, and the mum wrote me out his whole routine, sleep, bottles,
Yeah.
everything. And the first day didn't quite go to plan. And then the second week she wrote it all out again. He had other ideas, and then this week she handed him to me. Said he was fed at 7:30. She said, you just let it get, because he wasn't interested in sleeping because he was overstimulated.
Right.
Everything was going on.
Yeah.
He was due to have a bottle, but he just wouldn't, like he couldn't sit still to have the bottle. He was scooting around. She said he likes to sleep twice for 2 shorter naps. Well, he just played until he couldn't play anymore, and then he just slept for like 2.5 hours. So Mum and I kind of realised that he's going to work out his own routine in my space and
But
take it
he's
from there.
happy to do that though.
He was very happy to do it, and he was very unhappy for me to try and put him down to sleep
Right.
when he was supposed to be asleep, and he just wasn't going down, so he got back up and was at.
But that was good that you had it was good that your mum had written out that routine for you.
Very good.
So that you,
Had a base to
If
go
I-
from.
you had a base to go
Yeah,
by.
and if
that's
he
right.
was upset, I could go to the list and think, like, well, why would he be upset
Why
at
would
this
he be
time?
upset? What could I do to comfort
him,
him and that?
make him feel
But he
secure.
had other ideas.
He had
thought,
very
"Right,
other ideas.
wow, this is really good. I'm going to go and play and explore and have a really, really good time.
I'm not going to
And
bed.
I'm not going to bed. And I'll sort it out for myself.
I had the
Which is
opposite
great.
happen. I had a
Yeah.
5-month-old start.
Right.
And I was expecting, I said to her, please write out the routine, bottles, sleeps, what he likes, what he doesn't like. And what I got told was, oh, you'll learn what his cues. And that just was so difficult for me, because in the
Right.
first day, I'm not going to instantly know
No.
his cues. And I hadn't had a baby in a care for a while, so I was Googling how much food, when, how many bottles he's supposed to have. Because she just said bottles and formula. She
Right.
didn't tell me anything, and that is an example of how difficult it can be
Right.
when you don't get the information. At 5 months old, I knew nothing about this child. She wouldn't tell me. I asked her twice, and she just kept saying, he'll let you know at 5 months.
So that's
That
an issue.
stressed me
Yeah.
heaps.
So that would be an issue. That was an issue for you, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
so that's the point of not having the information.
Yeah, that's an
You weren't
example
given
of it.
an example. You were not given any information to be able to deal with this 5-month-old baby,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't be able to pick up the cues on the first
Day
day,
one,
on
no.
day one. It takes a while for you to make observations and interact with the child and the child to get to know you. So you would have felt better if you had that routine.
Yeah, I had nothing, shouldn't have
Yeah.
anything to fall back on.
And
Nothing
the
to fall
sheets
back
help
on.
when you, like this, the baby that I have, goes to sleep in a sleeping bag. Now, the sleeping
Right.
bag come to my house and the arms were, like it was all zipped up, so I assumed that you put his arms in the zip,
Inside the sleeping
inside
bag.
the sleeping
Right.
bag, and because I have like I send them photos and they can log on and have a look at my photos of the service, she messaged me on the page, his arms are supposed to be out. His arms, like, so
Right.
because it was buttoned and zipped up, I just assumed that
Right.
he
And you weren't given any instructions about the sleeping bag?
well,
only that he
I
sleeps
suppose
in
it was,
the sleeping bag.
she never even thought that I would
Put his
put his
arms
arms
in
in.
the sleeping bag.
But her
But everyone's
seeing
different.
my photos on
Right.
my page
Sure.
gave her the insight of what was happening, and it allowed her to actually comment during the day
Right.
as to
Well,
what was
that's
happening.
good, isn't
So
it?
that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there was another bit of information that you gathered.
Yeah.
So that you could help with the child.
By
Yeah.
chance.
So by chance. But
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's good.
Okay. So yeah. So by knowing the information about the child, you can set a routine for the child or change a routine. And if you're not given any information, well then you just have to go by observation of the child all the day.
Well, I
Which
found
is
out since
very
he
difficult.
has 2 sleeps at home, whereas for a long time now he's only had 1 large sleep at my place. He would not go down to 2 sleeps. So yeah, but that took time for me to get to.
That took time for you to
Yeah.
do. All right then. Okay. All right, so now we're on to the summary. So tonight we have discussed where to acquire information and the tools that could be used. These could be parents, enrolment forms, observation of child, agencies, reports, asking for the routine, which you brought up before, Kath, which is a really great place to get information. We've talked about issues that could arise in collecting the information, especially cultural differences, and make sure that you have an appropriate approach to the cultural differences. We've talked about consequences of not having the information, and you all have been giving some great examples of that, of what can happen if parents aren't forthcoming with information for you, and how you've handled it. And as it can cause distress for the child, the parent, the caregiver, and any other children in care. We've talked about the benefits, that you can settle the children into care more easily. It supports the continuity of care between the home and the service. The settling in process can be tailored to meet the individual needs of the child and the family. So we've come to the end of our training session. So please fill in the feedback forms and make sure you give them to me at the end of this session. I really enjoyed training you tonight, as you've been great participants, some great interactions and great stories. from the children, or what you were not given about the children. Quite some funny
We could
things.
write a book sometimes.
I'm sure you could, Patsy, write a book. Some of the things that you've been told or haven't been told from the families.
Or you find out later.
Yeah, so you've been very great participants in the training. You've been very engaged, which has made my job a lot easier, and I thank you for that. In the future, our next session is using the information that you have gathered to assist a baby or a toddler into your education and care service. That's in our next session. We'll now break for about half an hour, and then we'll come back and we'll continue with session 2 in provide care for education and babies. And thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.